The early evening news now on BBC One with Clive, Myrie.
At 6, reports of an Iranian embassy building in Syria being hit in an Israeli airstrike. Iranian state media says the building has been destroyed and a senior Iranian military commander has been killed. Here, good news on energy costs. A new price cap comes into force.
Hopefully, fingers crossed, things are going to start coming down now, which is going to make it a lot more manageable.
The Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling says Scotland's new anti-hate crime law is a threat to free speech.
Oh, bloody hell! Did you see the tail?
And a humpback whale has a lucky escape off the Cornish coast. Good evening. Iranian state media is reporting that one of their embassy buildings in Syria has been hit in an Israeli airstrike with a senior commander in the powerful Iranian Revolutionary Guards among the dead. The building is said to be adjacent to the Iranian consulate in the capital, Damascus. Well, Jeremy Bowen, our international editor, joins us now from northern Israel. Jeremy, what are you hearing on all this?
Well, the Iranians have confirmed that General Mohammad Reza Zahedi has been killed in this attack, that it hit the consulate, which is next to the embassy of Iran in Damascus. It's in an area called Meze that I know quite well. It's a sort of middle-class embassy district right at the heart, if you like, of the power dynamics that link up the Syrian regime, Hezbollah in Lebanon, not very far from here, and their patron in Iran. Now, he was the senior general of Iran, of the IRGC, which is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, in Lebanon and in Syria. So he's a big man, and this, I think, can only be seen as a serious escalation. I think the Israelis are testing the resolve of the Iranians and also of their allies, Hezbollah, who have been fighting already, if you like, a war that hasn't had a great deal of attention because of Gaza internationally, but it's steadily been going on here in northern Israel, over in Lebanon as well, elsewhere in the region. So in that context, this is, I think, a signal from the Israelis saying that they are serious about increasing the pressure on their enemies, and they are, I think, looking at the fact that both Iran and Hezbollah, while they have been participating in this, have not been pushing as hard as some might expect. So I think this is a challenge. They're saying, we're going to push harder at you. Are you going to push back? There will be a response, but it may not be the response that people might be expecting. Maybe not missiles, maybe cyber. Let's see.
Indeed. Okay, Jeremy, thank you for that. Our international editor, Jeremy Bowen, in northern Israel. Thank you. Meanwhile, after 2 weeks of heavy bombardment, Israel says it's completed its military operation in Gaza's biggest hospital, and all troops have now left the area. Most of Al-Shifa's medical complex has been left in ruins. Well, during the operation here in northern Gaza, the IDF says it killed 200 terrorists, claiming Hamas had regrouped inside the grounds. Palestinian media is reporting that a mother and her son, who were both doctors, were also killed. Lucy Williamson has the latest from Jerusalem.
Shifa's protection was its identity. Hard to recognise it as a hospital now. The surgery unit, emergency department, wards and corridors. Imploded, anonymised by war. Patients like Jana, trapped inside during the 2 weeks of fighting.
They didn't provide water for the last 2 days. There were sounds of shooting and bombing. The explosions from the artillery lit up the room we were in and shook the whole building.
They lit in a very small amount of food that wasn't enough. We were 150 patients and 50 medical staff. No treatment, no medicine, and constant bombing for 24 hours.
Israel called this a precise and limited operation against Hamas fighters. It says 200 gunmen were killed and hundreds of people arrested, and that its right to defeat Hamas trumps the protection hospitals have under international law. At home, Israel's war with Hamas is popular. Israel's Prime Minister is not. For months, Benjamin Netanyahu has been caught between the demands of hostage families and his own hard-right government. Now, pre-war protests over his judicial reforms are resurfacing too. Tents have once again appeared outside the Israeli parliament with the same simple demand: go. Protesters here won't be satisfied even if Benjamin Netanyahu brings home the hostages or dismantles Hamas. There are new posters. You're in charge, you're responsible, they say. But they wanted him out before the war. Now they're back and they want him gone even more. Karen has protested for years against the man known here as Bibi. If Bibi Netanyahu brings the hostages home, will you support him to stay?
I don't see the relations between the two. He needs to go just for the fact that 250 people in his tenure were kidnapped. He needs to go. It doesn't matter if he's bringing them back.
The national unity that followed the Hamas attacks is breaking down. 6 months on, Israeli soldiers are still fighting an old enemy in Gaza, but Benjamin Netanyahu is facing his own at home. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Energy prices in England, Wales and Scotland have fallen to their lowest level for 2 years. The regulator's new price cap has come into force, meaning a household using a typical amount of energy will pay around £1,690 a year. That's a saving of more than £200. The cap sets the maximum amount suppliers can charge for each unit of gas and electricity, but not the total bill. So if you use more, you'll pay more. Here's Kevin Peachy.
Spring has arrived in the gardens of this East Kent community centre, promising warmer months ahead.
I love the daffodils.
But locals are still feeling the chilling impact winter bills had on their finances and lifestyle.
It's been quite a harsh winter, and I haven't been able to afford to have the central heating on. So it's been rather challenging. And so I've been using hot water bottles. I invested in a battery-operated vest.
Inside the centre we find Kaz, who's found ways to stay warm too.
Wrap up in a blanket or one of those big snoods that you get now, and big fluffy slippers.
And how paying the bills has been a juggling act.
Some months you rob Peter to pay Paul, and that's just the way it is. And as long as you let people know that you're struggling, but I'm not the only person who's struggling. There's thousands and thousands. Quite a few of my friends are struggling as well, so, but hopefully, fingers crossed, things are going to start coming down now, which is going to make it a lot more manageable with everything.
Manageable because today the cost of each unit of gas and electricity in the home has come down. Energy prices are now at their lowest level for 2 years, but at the same time some government support is being wound down and other bills, water, council tax, phone and broadband are on the way up. Financial pressures aren't over, they just look a bit different.
That will pay for itself on the energy saving.
That's why this former mining community is part of a project sharing good habits to save energy and money. If you use more energy, you pay more. So Sarah, who leads the discussion, says simple tips are best, even at this time of year.
3 tips would be: 1, your hot water setting. If it's too hot to wash your hands with, your boiler's too high. 2, your drafts from your chimney to your windows and your doors, manage those drafts. And 3, your showers. You need to stick to a 4 minutes. Find a 4-minute song, less Bohemian Rhapsody in the shower. And again, that's £70 a year just on water and energy that you could save.
One water charity has even compiled a 4-minute song playlist, keeping people here and around the country to time and their finances on song. Kevin Peachy, BBC News.
And you can get full details of all the changes happening this week, the beginning of a new financial year. On the BBC News website, there's also lots of information on how to cope with the cost of living. The Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling has invited police to arrest her if officers believe she's committed an offence under Scotland's new hate crime law. From today, it's an offence to stir up hatred relating to someone's age, disability, religion, sexual orientation or transgender identity. Ms. Rowling, who lives in Edinburgh, says the legislation is a threat to free speech. But the First Minister, Humza Yousaf, says it will guard people from what he calls a rising tide of hatred. Here's James Cook.
This is a nation struggling to strike a balance between liberty and safety, between freedom of speech and protection from hatred. These protesters think the new hate crime law gets that balance wrong, but the First Minister disagrees.
I'm very proud of the Hate Crime Act. We have seen, I'm afraid, not just in the UK and of course Scotland, but right across many parts of the world, this kind of rising tide of hatred against people because of their protected characteristics. So unless your behaviour is threatening or abusive and intends to stir up hatred, then you have nothing to worry about in terms of the new offences being created.
But what exactly is in the Hate Crime Act? The law creates a crime of stirring up hatred relating to age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, transgender identity or being intersex. It also includes racial discrimination, although that was already illegal under an old law. A publicity campaign is now encouraging people to report behaviour which crosses a line from offensive, shocking or disturbing to threatening and abusive. But one group is not protected by the law: women. J.K. Rowling, who lives in Edinburgh, says that is wrong. On social media today, the author posted about several trans people who are protected, concluding, "I'm currently out of the country, but if what I've written here qualifies as an offence under the terms of the new Act, I look forward to being arrested when I return to the birthplace of the Scottish Enlightenment."
There will be a rush to report people to the police, including high-profile individuals. I imagine that there will be many complaints, for example, made against J.K. Rowling. So I think that, yes, there is a high chance the police will be overwhelmed with a lot of complaints, some of which will be purely spurious.
The Scottish Government says it's planning a separate law to tackle hatred and harassment of women. But for now, senior police officers are worried about the impact of this act, with the complaints already coming in. James Cook, BBC News, Edinburgh.
Ministers are facing a potential revolt from Conservative MPs over plans to criminalise rough sleeping. Proposals in the Criminal Justice Bill would allow the police to fine or move on so-called nuisance rough sleepers. Well, Hannah Miller's here with more. How bad could this revolt be if it happens?
Well, Home Office sources are suggesting to us that these negotiations are all very much part of the normal process. But of course, they only negotiate if they are worried about a potential rebellion. And I think two things are interesting about this. First, of course, the issue itself, the idea that rough sleepers could be sent to jail or face fines of up to £2,500 has always been controversial ever since it was first suggested by the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. Secondly, though, there is also the politics of this. The MPs who are not very happy about this policy, and they're from the centre ground of the Conservative Party, they're not the same group of people who have been making life challenging for Rishi Sunak on a whole range of other issues. And then you have the amount of time that is being spent on these negotiations, which means that we now don't really have any clear sense of when the Criminal Justice Bill might actually become law. One MP actually suggested to us today it's been put on the back burner. All of that, of course, creating a challenge for Rishi Sunak.
Sure, so a challenge for him, but also, it seems, a bit of a local difficulty for Keir Starmer in Lancashire.
Yeah, this has been described as the biggest mass resignation of councillors under Keir Starmer's leadership. 20 councillors in total who will now sit as independents, including the leader of Pendle Borough Council, who previously had called for Keir Starmer to go, actually, over his stance on the Israel-Gaza war. They're accusing the party of stifling free speech and threatening to remove them as candidates. The BBC has been told that several of them had been spoken to after concerns were raised about their conduct, including allegations of anti-Semitism. All the Labour Party has to say on this today is that their focus is on winning the general election to improve people's lives. OK, Hannah, thank you. Hannah Miller there, our political correspondent.
The Home Office says more than 5,000 people have crossed the Channel in small boats so far this year, with nearly 800 making the journey this Easter weekend. Stopping the boats was one of Rishi Sunak's 5 pledges to the electorate ahead of this year's general election. A new study has found more than 250 people a week in England may have died unnecessarily last year due to very long waits for a bed in A&E. The figures come from the Royal College of Emergency Medicine. The government says it's making progress in reducing waiting times, including adding thousands of beds to increase capacity. Here's Dominic Hughes.
February saw the highest number of attendances to A&E on record. And despite some small improvements to waiting times, tens of thousands of people have faced long waits. It's well established that longer waits, particularly for those who need to be admitted, increase the chance of death. NHS data for England shows that in 2023, more than 1.5 million patients waited 12 hours or more in major emergency departments. Of those, around 1 million were waiting to be admitted to a hospital bed. Using a respected statistical model, the Royal College of Emergency Medicine has calculated that when looking solely at patients awaiting admission, an average of 268 excess deaths are likely to have occurred each week last year. With the number of people attending A&E increasing, the pressure is unrelenting. And experts say the number of excess deaths, over and above what you might expect, is not surprising.
So these findings won't surprise anybody who's working in an emergency department in our country at the moment. Far too many people are spending too long in our departments, and we know that this is harmful. The scientific evidence shows that people who wait more than 6 hours before they get admitted, you can start to plot an increase in their mortality. And we know that from between 6 to 12 hours, there is an increase in mortality.
The Department of Health and Social Care says it's making progress in reducing waiting times, including an extra 5,000 permanent staffed beds this winter. But doctors warn that what used to be described as winter pressures are a thing of the past. That pressure now lasts all year round. Dominic Hughes, BBC News.
Turkey's President Erdogan has described his party's worst ever defeat in the country's local elections as a turning point. He acknowledged his AK party had lost ground and promised not to act against the national will. The main opposition party achieved its biggest victory in nearly half a century, winning in all 5 of Turkey's largest cities, including Istanbul. In Germany, people over the age of 18 can now grow marijuana plants at home and carry the drug for personal use following the government's legalization of cannabis. The move comes as they try to tackle the black market trade in the drug. The new law allowing recreational use remains contentious because of health concerns and questions over whether it will help reduce or increase the illicit trade. And a burial crypt close to the resting place of Marilyn Monroe has sold at auction for more than £150,000. The buyer, a US tech investor, says he's always dreamt of being next to the Hollywood star. One of the actress's dresses also sold for over £250,000, 8 times the asking price. A humpback whale has had a lucky escape after being cut free from fishing lines off the Cornish coast. The large adult whale, known locally as Ivy, was entangled yesterday. Andy Cowie, who was first on the scene, says the rescue was remarkable.
I think Ivy was very lucky to be able to get out alive. She was in the right place that she got spotted by a passing boat, not very far offshore. She was lucky that she got entangled on the surface and not at depth. And she was lucky that the guys from the RNLI were able to cut her free and she was able to go on her way.
Andy Cowie, the skipper of the boat that helped free Ivy the whale. Now, time for a look at the weather news, and Louise is here. Hi, Louise. Spring.
Hello, Clive. Yes, spring. Finally, I've got the dress on to prove the point. Good evening, everybody. There's been winners and losers, really, with the weather story today. In Norfolk, which had pretty grey, miserable day for some on Good Friday, you had the lion's share of the sunshine today. Absolutely glorious. But there was some rain around, some of it heavy and persistent, moving its way out of North Wales, up into the northwest of England, into Scotland and Northern Ireland. And then sunny spells and scattered showers for some, particularly down to the southwest, some of them heavy with the odd rumble rumble of thunder. So, as we go through the evening and overnight, the rain will continue to drift its way north and linger across eastern Scotland. The showers will tend to fade a little, pushing down towards the Kent coast. And sandwiched in between the two, we're going to see some patchy mist and fog, low single figures under those clear skies. So, chilly start for some, murky start for some as well. But the mist and fog will lift away. And for much of England and Wales, as those showers ease away from Essex and Kent, well, it'll be a dry, sunny day. Rain by the end of the day into the southwest. But that frontal system lingers, and it's interesting to point out a cool northeasterly breeze in Scotland. So here, feeling quite chilly on exposed coast, and that northeasterly wind is going to be with you for much of the week. But elsewhere, with some sunshine, if you dodge those showers, we're looking at highs of 15 degrees. It'll feel quite pleasant. But as we move into Wednesday, low pressure returns, and it is going to dominate the remainder of the week. So there'll be outbreaks of rain, almost like we've seen today, moving their way northwards across northern England into southern Scotland and Northern Ireland. Behind it, a few scattered showers. Wind direction plays its part with a mild southwesterly, highs of 15 degrees. With that cool northeasterly, we're only looking at around 6 or 7 under the cloud and the rain. Looking ahead, you're going to have to dodge outbreaks of rain from time to time. It's going to stay unsettled this week and turning very mild in the south. Clive.
All right, Louise, thank you. Louise Leah there. That's it. I'll be back at 10, but you can keep up with all the latest developments on the BBC website. Now, let's join our colleagues for all the news where you are. Bye for now.
Welcome to BBC London. I'm Victoria Hollins. First,